In today's video, I'm going to be talking about the confirmed upcoming RPGs that I'm personally the most excited about. Now, that doesn't mean that they're all going to turn out amazing, but these are the ones that stand, a leg above the others for one reason or another, personal to me. And I can't think of any better way to start this video than with Divinity, Larian Studios' upcoming RPG/CRPG. This is my most anticipated game in general of the future, and it will be all over the channel in due time. Now, there is a close second on this list, but Divinity takes the top spot here, not just because I love the Divinity franchise as a whole, but because it's being made by Larian, so we have some level of reassurance here of a quality product. Now, Larian has released 6 Divinity games so far, with Original Sin 2 in 2017 being the most recent, and they've built quite the reputation for improving with basically every release of theirs, and they're almost always innovating without losing what makes their games special in the first place. With over 500 developers now, better technology, and all that XP gained from making Baldur's Gate 3, I think they're in the best position they've ever been in. Last year's Q&A on Divinity also hinted that the level of player choice and permutations in this game could be the craziest we've seen yet, as Larian has become quite efficient with their processes, and the new version of their Divinity engine seems to be quite the achievement. And for RPG fans, this creates some serious anticipation for what the future holds. It also looks like this game will be leaning into a much darker, grittier tone than what you feel in the original Sin games, which did explore very dark themes. They were just never presented with the cinematic weight and visual presentation that BG3 has. And it's also exciting to think about how much they're expanding on the world building and lore of Rivellon, as they've hired more writers specifically for that. This will be Larian Unchained, and I'm guessing early access mid-2027, just a guess though. Okay, thank you to Amazon Games for sponsoring this video. Let's take a brief moment to talk about Throne and Liberty. So Throne and Liberty just launched a massive new update, the Frozen Divide Nyx, that's perfect for new and returning players alike. In fact, hardcore players, you'll now be able to reach level 60 and experiment with the new progression systems. This update brings with it a ton of fresh new content, including an entirely new frozen tundra region called Nyx, where you can glide around using the Aether suit to encounter 25 player triggered field events. Now, one of the biggest changes is a complete item progression overhaul, putting more emphasis on finding stronger gear rather than endlessly upgrading what you already have. There's also the brand new Gauntlet weapon that let you switch between a defensive tanking playstyle and an offensive damage focused one. For PvP players, we also have the new Remnants of Nyx mode, which is an extraction style mode with 30-minute sessions with up to 4 players per party, where you'll be gathering rewards and hopefully exiting alive with those rewards. But if PvE is more your thing, you'll also find 2 new endgame co-op dungeons, the Stonegrave Cradle and the Frost Breath Cave. And also note that elite enemies across Elysium have been replaced with superior variants offering better rewards. So if you're ready to explore Nyx, try out the new gauntlets, and push further than ever before with the all-new progression systems, check out Throne and Liberty, the Frozen Divide Nyx. I'll have a link down below. Up next is my second most anticipated game, and that is Warhorse Studios' upcoming Middle-earth RPG. Unfortunately, there's no footage to show here, so what you're seeing is Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, and we know basically nothing at this point aside from this game being a Middle-earth RPG. Now, the lack of info, however, doesn't stop me from thinking about what this game could be pretty much every day of my life. There are only a handful of studios out there that I trust with the Middle-earth IP, and Warhorse, believe it or not, would actually probably be my first choice here if you asked me to pick a studio. And seeing the news of all of this was something I never thought I'd see in a million years, yet here we are. Not only are KCD 1 and 2 two of my favorite games of all time, they're also 2 of the most immersive games ever made. And what IP deserves that level of immersion more than Middle-earth? I think many of us actually gave up on the idea of ever, getting a deep Middle-earth RPG that's not an MMO, which is another reason why this announcement was such a surprise. And it's also exciting to think about the writing quality, or potential writing quality, as KCD 2 had some of the most authentic characters I've ever experienced in a video game. And I want that in a Middle-earth game as well. We also desperately need a Middle-earth game with incredible cinematics, and if it's anything like KCD 2, I think we are in good hands. Warhorse is also excellent at pulling from existing lore, as KCD is deeply rooted in real medieval Bohemian history, which gives me a bit more confidence that they'll treat Tolkien's world with the same care. As for predictions, I'm assuming the game will be first person, as that's what Warhorse is good at, and the map that they shared on X and maybe on their website too, it could hint at the Third Age as the time period for this game. We're gonna have to wait for more news though, or that first trailer, whenever that may be. That is going to be so exciting when that actually drops. When we see that notification of whatever they're going to call it, and there's a trailer to accompany it, it's going to be a hell of a day for the gaming industry. So now that I got the two behemoths out of the way, the two games that will take precedence over all others on this channel, let's continue on with two RPGs that are slotted for this year, 2026. And up first is Forsaken Realms Vahrin's Call, that has a July 27th release date for PC, with consoles potentially coming later. I'll explain some of these games a little bit more, as you all might not be familiar with the smaller ones. And this is an indie RPG that's being developed by just 7 passionate developers, and I've been following it for over 5 years now. It's been really cool watching the game evolve and seeing what such a small team has been able to accomplish. Now, the biggest reason I'm excited for Vahrin's Call is that it reminds me a bit of classic Fable. It has this cozy fantasy vibe to it, and the soundtrack that they released is really fantasy, cozy, relaxing. I don't know, man, it just makes me feel good when I look at trailers and gameplay of it. And the developers also have some design philosophies that really line up with what I personally look for in many RPGs. Progression in this game is based on actually using things to improve with them, use it and get better. You'll need to discover some skill books to actually unlock new abilities and spells, which heavily incentivizes exploration. And the game also isn't completely covered in yellow quest markers, as I know the devs are not huge fans of too much non-immersive hand-holding in their world. Of course, it's important to set expectations here. This likely isn't even 5% of a BG3 sized production, but for RPG fans who aren't always chasing the next AAA blockbuster game, I think this could end up being a real indie gem. And not long after Vahrin's Call, on September 3rd, for PC and consoles, we have the most anticipated game of 2026 for myself, Blood of the Dawnwalker. And this is a single-player RPG that describes itself as a sandbox narrative game, which that alone immediately grabbed my attention, even if it's a little bit of marketing jumbo. It's super interesting, a sandbox narrative. Your goal in this game will be to save your family from the vampire overlords, but how you go about achieving that is largely up to you. And I think you can even say screw your family if you really want to. This is a very unique sounding RPG, as you can attempt to defeat the vampire lords in the early parts of the game, but the key word there is attempt, as the devs say it'll be incredibly difficult to pull that off, which is where the incentive and encouragement to, first build up 𝑒𝑛𝑔 comes in, get stronger, to form relationships with NPCs and possibly gather allies, and to just experience what the world has to offer with its quests and loot and all that good RPG stuff. Now, there is no main quest in this game, so to say. Every quest you do is part of your own story to accomplish your own goals, and Dawnwalker appears to be packed with plenty of choice-driven consequence. It's just formatted in a much less traditional RPG style. There's also a pretty important time mechanic going on in the game, where you only have 30 days and 30 nights to save your family, and the game actually supposedly still goes on after that. But do note that exploration of the world, for example, won't actually progress time forward, so you don't always feel like you're on the clock. Anything that's actually going to progress time forward, the game is going to let you know before you decide to engage with that activity, or attempt a certain quest and so on. I definitely understand some people's hesitation on time mechanics in general, but I, for one, am excited to try something different for once, and I'm just going to trust the devs as of right now with their intended design and just see what it offers. I'm also a huge fan of the darker, grittier tone that they've shown so far, the trailer and the gameplay. I've never been the biggest vampire fan, but I do like vampires when they're more part of mature, grounded medieval fantasy, and in this case, medieval folklore. So I'm much more interested here. This is dark, gritty medieval vampire, not Twilight. Now, I actually got to play Blood of the Dawnwalker less than 2 weeks ago. I can't talk about what I experienced just yet, but stay tuned. It's not too far off in the future. And actually, that's really it for 2026. There are definitely other games that I'm interested in and even excited for, but none that have me at above average RPG anticipation levels, at least as of right now. But continuing on here, let's talk about another RPG, Clockwork Revolution, which recently got a 2027 release year. This is an ambitious looking first-person RPG from inXile Entertainment, the studio behind the Wasteland games. And from everything they've shown so far, it looks like we have quite the reactive RPG here. We're told that the game's design is taking a butterfly effect approach, where decisions made in the past can physically reshape entire districts, change NPC lives, and unlock different side quests in the present. So you're probably noticing a theme here in this video. The RPGs that I'm most excited for tend to have a lot of reactivity and permutation elements. This game is set in the steampunk city of Avalon, where you'll find that history itself has been changed and manipulated by the city's ruling class. And we, the players, will be using a device called the chronometer that will allow us to go back in time to change the past to then return to a reshaped present. And that idea alone is enough to pique my interest. And as someone who's traditionally a huge fantasy medieval fan, I'm actually excited to change that up a bit and get some steampunk going on next year. There's a bit of a BioShock vibe with this game. Now, another reason why I'm excited is that inXile does have a good reputation built on player choice, branching quests, and meaningful consequences, so one would assume that that will continue here with Clockwork Revolution. Moving on to Metro 2039, coming out on February 27th for PC and current gen consoles. And yeah, I know it doesn't fully fit this list as it's more of a story-driven survival first-person shooter, but I'm putting it in this video anyways as I find myself really excited for it, and I think it's going to pique the interest of at least some of you as well. And also note that we've been told that the game will be placing a big emphasis on choice consequence, which is actually a very RPG thing, even though the game's not really an RPG. Now, I never actually played Metro Exodus from 2019. I watched a friend play it for a bit, but never played myself. But I've heard so many great things about it. And also, after playing Stalker 2 last year, a game that falls into a similar category, I would say, I find myself really getting in that mood for an immersive post-apocalyptic game. And hey, my name is Wolfhard FPS. I should put that FPS part of the name to use. The atmosphere of Metro, and from the trailer here, appears to be one of the game's biggest strengths. If they can really lean into that immersion aspect alongside having some player choice, I am all for it. Souls-like enjoyers, I'm putting Lords of the Fallen 2 on this list, as I am a Souls-like fan, and I feel like I should have at least one in this video, even though this game isn't necessarily, on par with my excitement for Divinity and games like that. For a Souls-like, I can't really think of any other besides whatever FromSoft is working on in the future. Any other Souls-like that has me as excited as this one does. I actually just watched the recent gameplay trailer and it looks pretty sick, I gotta say. I actually enjoyed the first game too, even though it was far from perfect. It launched to a lot of criticism from the Souls community, so I was already interested in hearing about the sequel, but this recent gameplay just took that to a whole new level. It looks really solid, it looks fun, it looks challenging, and next year I think I'm going to be in a Souls-like mood again. And this game is currently planned for Q1 of 2027 for PC and current gen consoles, and it should actually also have co-op. And now on to another potential indie gem, like I said, Vahrin's Call will hopefully be, and that is Outward 2. Now, the first Outward goes down as one of my favorite indie games of all time, so I do have high expectations for the sequel. Early access was originally planned for this year, July actually, but they recently announced that they're going to be pushing that back to 2027. Outward 2, like the first game, will be placing you into the world not as some legendary hero or king. Instead, you're just another adventurer trying to survive, and survive you must, as this game blends the survival genre with the RPG genre, and I personally love that combination in video games. I do note that this game will actually feature 2-player co-op. Nine Dot Studio has a strong philosophy of letting players figure things out for themselves rather than hand-holding and quest markers littering all over your screen. And if 𝑘𝑡𝑒 2 is anything like the first one, which it will be, they will be executing on this very well. One example here is your character marker will not show up on your map when you look at the map, but because the world is designed with proper signage and roads and landmarks such as lighthouses and mountains, etc., you can still navigate the map quite well. It just takes a little more engagement with the game. You have to immerse yourself in it and actually look around and see where you're at and think a little bit. Use your brain just a little bit. And all of that resulted, at least in the first game, in some really beautiful exploration moments, some tough survival situations. I have all sorts of memories in Outward 1 of being lost in the dark and diseased and all sorts of crazy stuff. Now, before you head out on a journey, and do note the game is quest-based, it has main quests, side quests, etc., you will need to pack supplies such as food and water. You'll have to prepare for harsh weather with proper clothing and just be as ready as possible for the unknown. And all of that survival, challenge stuff is on top of the game being an RPG with some branching paths with your faction choice and your starting area choice, character creation, and plenty of different ways to build your character. I think Outward 2 has a great chance at being another cult classic like the first one was. It was very successful, but it was quite niche at the same time. And the devs have stated openly that they're not making this second one to try to appeal to a wider audience. They're just trying to make Outward 1 basically on steroids, and I love to hear that. Also in 2027, we actually have two sci-fi games, two sci-fi RPGs that have been at the peak of my interest for a while now. Let's start off with Exodus, which is being developed by a team that's comprised of several notable BioWare devs such as Chris King, Chad Robertson, Drew Karpyshyn, and even James Olin was leading the project for the majority of its development time. Exodus is currently slotted for early 2027 for PC and current gen consoles, but I'd say a delay is possible. I don't really know though. Now, the main reason why I'm excited for this one is the world building and lore, as I've delved very deeply into it in the TTRPG and some novels that Peter F. Hamilton wrote, and the potential for the game's time dilation mechanics, but we have yet to see if that'll actually be meaningful and how far they take it. When it comes to world building, the Exodus franchise has already set up some of the most incredible lore out there for the sci-fi genre. And the game, at least from my experience, as I did get to play an early version of it for close to 4 hours, appears to be building on that further in a good way when it comes to the lore and world building. Now, the time dilation mechanic is very interesting in theory for this game, as in the game you're going to be heading out on missions with companions and traveling at near light speed, which will then cause the places that you leave behind to experience time at a much slower rate relative to what you experienced. And if this system is done well, we could be in for some really interesting choice consequence. When I played the game, the gameplay itself also felt very solid, which was great to experience, as many people value gameplay very highly in their video games, believe it or not. And while I do have plenty of concerns still over companions, face models, and some of the systems potentially not being as interesting as they could be when looking at the scope of the game, I remain hopeful, and as I said in my recent video going over my hands-on time, I am leaning positive. I mean, leaning is very different than standing positive, but I'm feeling hopeful that there could be something good here if they have the time that they need to really flesh things out and give the fans what they want. So more Exodus on the channel in the future, so stay tuned for that. And our next sci-fi game is none other than the Expanse Osiris Reborn, another party-based sci-fi RPG. And there's 3 reasons here that stand out to me as to why this one has piqued my interest. And number 1 is I like the Expanse TV show, and I'm currently on my own little sci-fi arc right now, as most of my life has been spent obsessing over fantasy medieval type stuff. So it's exciting to have 2 sci-fi universes that both have upcoming games right now. Number 2 is that it's Owlcat Games, and Owlcat as a studio has a great reputation when it comes to RPGs, specifically CRPGs really, as the Expanse is actually their first action RPG. But I'm really hoping here that some of their design philosophies will carry over to this game as well. And reason number 3 is that Owlcat recently announced that they're replacing the male voice actor for the game. Obviously, for the voice actor, that's not good news. But the reason why this stands out to me is because player feedback from the demo was very strong in stating that the voice actor for the male custom character and his brother just wasn't really a good fit for this game, and it was kind of killing the vibe. And Owlcat actually listened and is taking action. Owlcat does have a history of showing that they listen to player feedback, and sure, that doesn't mean that Osiris Reborn will automatically be great, but it's a good sign in this day and age where it seems like so many studios don't really listen to feedback. I played the demo, and overall I did enjoy it. The game still has a long way to go. A lot of people pointed out Marvel style dialogue, which hopefully they are able to work on that, because tone is very important and immersion is very important in these RPGs. But for now, I'm going to remain hopeful that they really nail things down, and maybe we're going to have another sci-fi gem on our hands. And speaking of listening to player feedback, let's talk about Solasta 2, which is actually currently out in early access on PC. It should be out on console as well when 1.0 comes out. For those unaware, this is a game that's based on the 2024 D&D 5.1 rule set. I might be getting that a little bit wrong, but it's a party-based, turn-based CRPG, and while many things will feel familiar to D&D players or even BG3 players, the game has its own universe and lore, its own variations on D&D classes, and etc. I actually really enjoyed the first Solasta. It was very indie and quite low budget feeling in certain areas, but overall the gameplay was extremely solid and fun. And with Solasta 2, Tactical Adventures actually appears to be really upping their game when it comes to things that were kind of subpar in Solasta 1, such as visual presentation and voice acting and all that good stuff that can really help you immerse yourself into an RPG. But back to player feedback, the character creator in early access when it first came out received a decent amount of criticism, and lo and behold, a month or two later, maybe it was more than that, Tactical Adventures actually updated early access with a very much improved character creator, which clearly took a lot of time, especially for a small studio. And they showed us that they are willing to listen and really try to make the best game that they possibly can with what they're limited to when it comes to resources and time. Very excited for 1.0. I don't want to say it's a BG3 like, because then that brings up expectations for it to be on BG3's level, and we're talking this game's probably like 5 to 10% of BG3's budget, maybe even less. But both games still fall into a similar category and even subcategory of RPG and CRPG. It is time now to briefly talk about Kingdom Come, as Warhorse did announce that another Kingdom Come game is in development, and we may even see it as early as next year. Now, we know basically nothing about it, and the gameplay in the background is once again KCD 2. We don't know who the characters will be. We don't know if it will take place after Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. Will it be more of a little spin-off type game, or an actual full-blown standalone RPG? Do note that it has been announced as the next Kingdom Come game, not actually Kingdom Come Deliverance, so that obviously means something. Regardless, as I stated earlier in the video, I think Warhorse is one of the best RPG studios in the industry right now, and I definitely look forward to this next adventure, and I'm happy to inform any of you guys that might not have known that this is actually happening alongside the Middle-earth RPG. And then, of course, also in 2027, we have Fable, which is definitely still up in the air as to whether or not it'll be a good game or not. It's been delayed quite a lot. I would assume they're fixing things that received criticism in the past, which is actually a good sign, but at the same time, it's like, how many reiterations of a game can you do and have it still end up being a good game? I'm not entirely sure, but OG Fable 1 is a very nostalgic game for myself, and I am excited to return to Albion. I think the world design, the way the environments look, and the immersion of that all look really good in this one. They look quite beautiful, very fairy tale like, which is exactly what I want for a Fable game. Well, the character design, yeah, maybe not so much, but honestly, for a lighthearted, more silly type game like Fable, I don't really care that much about that. We have seen some interesting systems involving reputation, and the devs do seem to be placing a big emphasis on life sim type elements such as owning homes, getting married, etc. And I look forward to just living in Albion alongside having an actual RPG, hopefully. Choice consequence also appears to be a big focus for this game, and I know it is marketing jargon these days for many studios to say that, but the Fable devs have talked about a few instances of choice consequence, that sound pretty cool, such as if you decide to kill this one giant character, he seems to be a fairly important NPC, his body will fall and his corpse will remain near the town where he was killed, which in turn affects some of the prices of homes in the area. It's pretty disappointing not seeing the return of some of the OG systems like growing horns on your head or a halo. I think that's a major missed opportunity, and I do think Fable is better suited for a good versus evil, morality system rather than this moral ambiguity system that they seem to be going with. But I'm open to give it a try, and I'd be lying if I didn't say that I still wasn't excited for this game. It's one of the RPGs that I do think about quite often. Let's hope that they pull it off. And if they don't, well, oh well. And next up is The Witcher 4, and do note that this is tech demo gameplay, so not real gameplay. There's definitely some controversy out there on this one for several reasons, and there's no denying that the botched release of Cyberpunk 2077, which also came with a dose of deceptive marketing, is not easily forgiven, nor do I expect everybody to just forgive and forget. With that said, when I look at CDPR's past, they are clearly one of the most successful RPG studios in the industry, and they basically have not released a bad game yet. In fact, Witcher 3 and Cyberpunk 2077, their two most recent games, are still among the most successful RPGs of all time, even if Cyberpunk took a bit to get to that point. While I do personally prefer playing RPGs, with character creators or even male protagonists when given the actual choice, that's typically what I choose. I feel like I can relate and immerse myself in the role a little bit more. I still think that Ciri is a natural fit for a Witcher game, and I'm good with continuing on the journey with her. Only time will tell, though, if the audience at large also feels this way, as Geralt is the Witcher to many, understandably. I actually started reading the Witcher books recently, so I am diving into the lore, and this, of course, is also increasing my anticipation for more Witcher 4 news and, of course, the game itself. And really, the idea of another massive RPG, as this is what CDPR does, is really exciting to think about. If they've not gained back your trust yet, fair enough, and I will certainly make sure not to, blind myself with too much hopium here. But as of now, I'm going to remain optimistic. And actually, for the last game on this list, I'm actually kind of scared to say it because I honestly don't know what to expect. But I'm going to put it on this list anyways because the idea of it being good is really exciting to think about. And you know what? If things point to it just being garbage as we get closer, I will call it out. But I'm gonna hold off and try to stay a little bit more neutral and level-headed for now until we get more concrete information and more gameplay and news and all of that. And this is none other than the Elder Scrolls 6. The reason why I'm excited is because the Elder Scrolls games in general are some of my favorite games of all time. Bethesda is very good at immersion and the soundtrack to accompany that, and just kind of giving you a sandbox style world where you can go wherever you want and stuff like that. And that really fits my style for what I like in RPGs, that unprecedented freedom. And I also think the Elder Scrolls just has a ton of lore that's so awesome and cool, and you can go back and play all the games to learn more about things and bring all that knowledge to this next game, and all of it I think will tie together quite nicely. But with all that said, I 100% agree with the sentiment that not all things point to Bethesda being the studio that they used to be. They don't really seem to be interested in changing the trajectory of their reputation. It seems to not be the greatest right now and only going down, and it doesn't seem like they really care. And I've also seen instances of arguing with players on Steam reviews, implying that players are just playing Starfield wrong, for example. 𝑁𝑜𝑡𝑒, I think his name is, or is it Emil? 𝑁𝑜𝑡𝑒, the current studio director, has addressed criticism in the past with saying things like, it's just not everyone's cup of tea, and that players are disconnected from the realities of game development, which, even though I agree that there's probably a lot of truth from players being disconnected from the reality of game development, at the end of the day, all that matters is if players are happy and willing to spend money on your product, and if they're not, it doesn't matter if they're connected or disconnected, they're not going to play your game, and it's going to fail. So yes, it is very much concerning seeing some stuff like this, and of course this is all under Microsoft's umbrella, and who the heck knows what's going on at Microsoft these days. It can't be that exciting to work for a studio under Microsoft, right? Which I think would ultimately affect your motivation to work on any game at Microsoft, knowing that you could just be fired the next day, or laid off, should I say. And that of course plays into my thoughts here. Even CDPR, they've just become quite the corporation these days, and you know, that's a concern for The Witcher 4 as well. Another concern that I have, it's funny, I'm turning this into a concern section now, even though it's on my most hyped list here, is that Starfield, their most recent game, while I don't think is the worst game ever made, not by any stretch of the imagination, it's just quite lacking in so many areas, and it's kind of sad to see Bethesda not really show much evidence of improving or innovating in the right ways. You know, a bunch of procedurally generated planets isn't really the innovation that us players want, and it's just such a different, like if you compare Larian Studios with Original Sin and how they innovated and improved to Original Sin 2, which then led to Baldur's Gate 3, like it's such a crazy difference from looking at Bethesda's history here. Now, with all that said, I'm going to give them a little bit of the benefit of the doubt here until we actually see some Elder Scrolls 6 in action, and that's when my opinion might start being swayed, you know, one way or the other. But there's no denying that the idea of the Elder Scrolls 6, even just being a good game, even if it's not necessarily the most amazing game ever made, is exciting to think about, because it's the Elder Scrolls, it's Tamriel, and there's so many unique experiences in this franchise. I just hope they can continue at least some of that. And I'm going to leave it at that for this video. There's plenty of other games that I am excited for, but these are the ones that truly stand out, that I have my mind locked onto almost daily. And some of these games are going to take over the channel once we have enough news and information, such as Divinity and the Middle-earth RPG. Let me know down below what games you are most excited for, ones that you really think about just all the time, the ones that stand out, to see if I did miss any actually. I will take a look at all the comments, and thank you guys so much for watching this video. Stay tuned for that Dawnwalker hands-on impressions video. Can't tell you the date, but soon enough, my friends.